nice article in the Managing Madrid blog. Wonderful lads that do a great job there. And worth reading about that man there. Karim Benzema needs to rest, and the numbers reveal why.
Times ended up almost looking like a 6-3-1. Some very good writing about that on the Managing Madrid website. First-rate podcast as well. Of course, Fede Valverde was a huge part of the equation.
Well, 6 months ago, or a little less, felt like we couldn't put any foot wrong as a club. We got through our era where we were too stingy to sign too many players with 2 Champions Leagues. And now it's November, and it feels like we're in for a great reckoning where we're not going to capitalize on Barcelona's down era anymore. Like, the whole narrative has shifted. Like, 2 years ago, Barcelona won the league. It looked like we weren't capitalizing on our talent. Last year, we were on top. This year definitely feels like a down year so far. There's been a lot of things that went right last season have fallen apart. Antonio Pintus is getting criticized very heavily behind the scenes. The players aren't happy. The club seems almost naive for not signing a center back to replace Nacho in the summer. So, Gerard, is this just how sports goes, you'd say?
Yeah, it's the nature of sports and big business and anything, right? You have these peaks and these valleys. And I think oftentimes when you have extreme success, that's the time when you need to be more on your P's and Q's and mindful of what's going on, because you can get diluted and you know, high off your own supply and not realize that, wait, we got some real cracks we need to address here. And I think last year's double and really, you know, and winning Supercopa masked over a lot of issues this clubs have, which are coming to bear right now.
High off your own supply is a very good way to describe this Real Madrid board right now. Everyone's been looking for the term to describe it, and you know, you could call it pride, hubris, ego, but I think that's the most accurate one. They're not really prideful as much as when you win, you question why you have to change things a lot. And I think Real Madrid especially, we've succeeded every time we've tried to succeed in some facet, whether that's Perez has succeeded, whether that's the 2000s. He got everyone he wanted. He won a Champions League. He brought Ronaldo and he got his three-peat. So he will get what he wants, but he usually has to fail and revisit it. And you've been a Real Madrid fan a while. You've seen him fail so many times. I guess, like, compared to previous times, does this seem like a trickier paradigm shift or not? I guess we're gonna get into this episode, guys, but just as an overview, where would you say? Do you think the solutions are easy? Just realize you got to sign more players.
They're easy and they're complex. So not to go around your ends, you know, give you sort of talk out both sides of my mouth. I think that what makes this time a little bit more challenging is that Florentino's older, and the older you get, generally speaking, the more intransigent you are, right? And the more unwilling you are to move off of positions, particularly when you've achieved a lot of success, as you mentioned, right? Because it's like, well, wait a minute. I've won 9 Champions Leagues as a president of this club, like all these things, like I kind of know what I'm doing, right? And it's like he does know what he's doing, but at the same time, you need to have a holistic view, right? In any environment you're in, whether it be sports, any company, whatever, you don't want a situation where the person in charge has yes man and or people who are there strictly out of loyalty and will be like, yeah, you know what, you're right. You want an environment where there is healthy disagreement and everybody can put their ideas forward and it can be discussed among the group, right? You want candor. And right now in that boardroom, I don't know that there's a whole lot of candor going on in there, right? And by candor, I mean like just speaking honestly and truthfully about what people are seeing and what the reality of the situation is. You mentioned success. I'll do a cross-sport analogy. People know that I cover the NBA, but I want to talk about tennis, for instance, for this example. Roger Federer at this point, I think, had won maybe 12 or 13 Grand Slams. It was clearly like on the way to being the greatest of all time, one of the greatest of all time. And he started working with Pat Roach, a legendary tennis coach. And he tried to get him to come into net more because he had exceptional hands and volley. And it was a real struggle for Pat and Roger because Roger's like, bro, I've already won 12 playing this way. Why do I have to switch up my style and do it like this, right? When you've been successful doing something, the evidence says you know what you're doing. So why now should I change, right? It's kind of counterintuitive, but the people who are the best in the world at consistently winning, for lack of a better word, are always questioning and changing and figuring out, okay, what's next? And I think for Real Madrid, we've kind of fallen off that a little bit.
Definitely. So this episode, we're going to get into the organizational structure of Real Madrid, who's involved with these injury decisions. There seems to be a lack of leadership there. Who's involved in deciding who we push for the Ballon d'Or, what went down a little bit with that incident, just in terms of, obviously, as a club, we pushed for Vinny and it didn't work in the end. And then, we're just going to get into all that, and also the whole process of signing players, whether we've gotten too stingy. So, that is what we're doing on this episode of The Real Deal, and here we go. Sorry, we weren't supposed to be on the screen with the intro, but
it doesn't matter, Sid, because the Real Deal intro music hits like you're walking into an arena, like a gladiator fight. Like, so it doesn't matter here on the screen because everybody's like, you're in a vibe right now.
For sure. So, let's start with the injury problems at Real Madrid and the new reports that came out from the Athletic / New York Times. So the report, if you're not familiar, came out saying that that inside the club, they're really unhappy with the marketing around Antonio Pintus. I've been harping on this for a few episodes now, if you've been listening to the show. And they're just wondering why he's hyped so much when there's so many injuries. There are questions about his methods. And inside the dressing room, the reports are that Pintus doesn't take full responsibility for players' injuries. And then the most concerning thing, that they don't know what metrics are important. That was very scary to read, because as someone who's self-taught, that's one of the first things you should probably learn when you're educating yourself about anything. And they don't know what metrics tell you, like specifically, they don't know if total distance ran or total distance ran at max intensity is a more relevant metric. Both are relevant in different ways. Like they're both different tests, but honestly, the max intensity is very important. The fact that you would even dispute like that metric is questionable. And it seems like, just from a health perspective, Florentino doesn't have one person he trusts. It seems like, here, hey, coach, you go here, you bring maybe some physios with you. We have club physios. We have a club doctor. When the players complain, he replaces the club doctor. And we did a members-only episode recently about Jesus Olmo and Pintus and Dupont and all the different personnel he's replaced. And I think a year or two ago, they replaced a doctor again or someone big. Nothing's working. Gerard, you read that report. What's your impression of that?
I mean, I'm concerned, right? First of all, as someone who, of course, is a fan of the club and wanting the club to do well, that's the first part. But also as a lover of sports, and I want these athletes, Sid, to play as long and as well as possible and be as healthy as possible, right? That's my goal for sports. Now, of course, realizing and being aware that this is professional sports and injuries are going to occur because that's just the nature. Our bodies were not designed to do these things, regardless of what kind of genetic freaks these people are. Like, it's just, it's nuts what they do. And so I'm concerned. And the part that really is alarming to me is that this is a club that, so maybe not in the terms of the state-backed revenue, like City Football Group and some of these, oil nations that back these football clubs. We don't have the revenue like that. But this is Real Madrid, right? This is the most valuable sports club in the world. So they're not poor by any stretch of the imagination, right? They have plenty of money to invest in, for lack of a better term, and I'll use it as a broad umbrella, sports science and sports performance. And right now, as a club, they're just not optimizing it. And so for me, Sid, like as a fan of a club like this, it's one thing if you root for a second tier, Portuguese club. All right, I get it. You don't got any money, right? Like, but this club should not have a situation where they don't have answers as to why injuries are occurring, or they have answers and they don't want to believe them, or whatever the situation may be. So to me, that suggests serious mismanagement on the part of a club. And, we talked about this a bit offline. In every sport, every club, in order to have optimal success, all the different facets of the organization have to be rowing in the same direction and working together. And right now, it seems that that's not the case. And when that happens, when one group is not pulling its weight, it stresses all the other groups, right? And injuries are one of the results of that, unfortunately.
So a lot of people will listen to this and push back and say, hey, like Man City lost Rodri, Pep can't coach, Man City have injuries, they don't look good. We're just like Man City, don't criticize our coach and our medical staff beyond reason. And that is a very reasonable counter argument. I guess when you look all around the clubs, they're all getting injured. Do you think that's a reasonable counter argument for Real Madrid? I think it is a reasonable argument for most teams. But if we're trying to be the best, then we need to be the industry leader in this aspect.
Yeah.
And I think that's the part also that a lot of fans miss, that when we market these like Real Madrid ways to them, we're marketing like innovations. And sometimes they're not even innovations. They're like bets the sporting director made. And it comes off, then you market it like the Pintus method. And it gets a name, it gets an athletic article, it gets a feature, it gets a story. But there's so many people in sports you never hear about, so many things you never hear about. And, you know, on that note, sorry, I lost my train of thought here, but I guess what I meant was, on that note, the Pintus stuff, it really started taking off the last few years, maybe opportunistically. I'm not sure if it's something the club intended, but we're coming back in so many games late that maybe the fitness guy comes in, he builds a name for himself. And Pintus is like the only guy I've seen in soccer who has this name. But like, I guess my point is the Pintus, like every club has someone like a Pintus. This Pintus method thing was blown out of proportion because maybe he took more control of the club's like fitness regimen than an individual coming outside does. He's more of a contractor who fixes things up. But in general, like for us to keep going from here, like we need to hire better nutritionists who you never hear about, better herbalists. Liverpool had an article in 2018 or 19 about Jurgen Klopp bringing on nutritionists. That's the most I've seen that side of it marketed. But like, I guess two questions. One, like, do you think that this is acceptable for Real Madrid, or is this a problem every team is facing? And two, if we fix this, is it because we innovate in a way that other teams haven't yet?
Yeah. So a lot to unpack there. I think this is a problem that every other club is facing because, as we've talked about in the past, Sid, the sports calendar is just too packed. There are just way too many matches. I mean, literally, the way it's looking at right now, these guys play year-round 3 out of 4 years. That's insanity. Like, it is zero time for the body to recover. So everyone's going to be experiencing this. You mentioned City losing Rodri and looking bad. One of the things I want to point out, and I believe you did this as well, the Rodri injury happened in the middle of the season, right? And, you know, for whatever, or, you know, during the season, we can argue about whether Rodri or Vinny is the best player in the world who should have won Ballon d'Or. That's a separate thing. But what can't be argued is Rodri's value to Man City, right? If Pep knew he wasn't going to have Rodri to begin the season, he would have done something different and figured it out. All right, here's what we're going to do instead, whatever. But to lose him 8 or 9 matches in with no one on the roster to replace, it's like, well, you're hamstrung with whatever you have. And De Bruyne's already injured, right? And he's not Rodri's same position, he's an attacking midfielder. But point is, you already have issues on that part of the pitch already. And there isn't like someone you can go to on the bench and say, let me put in Rodri Jr. Like there's no one. That person doesn't exist. Now, you can argue whether City Football Group did a bad job of having their bench stocked with someone better. Sure. I mean, that's what we say about our club, right? Like, but you can't have 3 deep of the world's best like that's just not feasible, right? You can't have the best player in the world, the second best player in the world, third best player in the world at each position on your club. That's just not realistic. So you're going to have backup and replacement level players. That's just how sports works. And when these injuries happen at the alarming rate they do, you get yourself in these situations. So that's kind of where they're at right now. As far as Madrid, I think that, yes, a lot of it is innovation, but I think it's also, as I mentioned earlier, Sid, just thinking about how do we continue to get better, right? In our sport, in the sport that I cover in the NBA, one of the models of this for a long time were the San Antonio Spurs, right? I think in 20 seasons, they made the playoffs 20 consecutive years, right? Like, I mean, they won 5 titles. Like, that to me is the model where every year you are an above average to elite club to good to very good club, and in those special years you win championships, right? Now the NBA is set up a little differently than soccer, but you get my drift. Now, that of course you have to have talent for that to matter. If you don't have good, it doesn't matter whatever your plans are and we're doing this, you're doing that. If you don't have the world's best players, it doesn't matter. So yes, having Duncan, having David Robinson before that, having Ginobili and Parker, and yeah, all of that is necessary, or else none of the other stuff we're talking about matters. Madrid already has that, right? We already get the top talent in the world. So yay, check mark there, right? But we have to optimize this talent, right? So that it is the best. So the club sort of moved away, Sid, right, from signing those older, expensive players and have gone after young guys, which we all love and laud, right? But there's no reason why a midfield of Jude Bellingham, Fede Valverde, Tchouaméni, and Camavinga, those four players should dominate every midfield they play, but they don't. And that's for a variety of reasons. Well, I got questions now. What is the deal? Why are they not? Because the oldest person is Valverde, and he's what, 25? Like, I mean, we should be running ruckshot over everybody in the midfield, but we don't. And physical fitness is a part of it. And it's not that the guys are lazy or anything like that. I just look at them, Sid, and you watch these matches. I'm like, we're already gassed. And I know why. It's because, oh, wait, Jude played all the way to Euro still to the end of that season. He had a week off or whatever. Then he had to come back well, of course, he's already exhausted and tired. And I think what people don't realize is that all these things connect, right? So physically tired players make mental errors, right? Because your brain just moves maybe a half a beat slow. These are the world's best cognitive, physical, like everything. When they are fully optimized, it's breathtaking and brilliant to watch on the pitch. When they are not fully rested, you start to see small chinks, right? I'll use another example for you. The 2022, I want to say, playoffs, that Nets Bucks series when KD hit that 2, but his toe was on the line. Kevin Durant has probably taken, I don't know, 1 billion threes in his lifetime. That man knows every geometry and inch of a basketball court and knows where his feet are at all times. You know why his foot was on the line? Because he had played 8 billion minutes in that series and was exhausted and could not, right? The brain could not make the calculation quick enough that my toe is not where it's supposed to be. I got to pull back. He just couldn't do it because he was exhausted, physically exhausted. They're always making mistakes. This is what happens in soccer. Guys are tired. So when they run and they plant back, right, they're not running how they normally run, fully optimized. Oh, wait, I stepped weird. Oh, crap. Now that's my knee. Oh, no, now I have this problem. Oh, I ran and I fell over clumsily and now my shoulder separated. I'm out for a month, right? All these things add up. And my point is, if we're not going to change the calendar schedule, which we know the people who make all the money, that it is what it is. Okay, fine. We can't fix that. But a club like Real Madrid should not be in a situation where it is, where we have literally nobody on the back line. If Rudiger gets hurt, I mean, first of all, the back line's already decimated. If he gets squirt, done. Like they have nobody back there. And we have players on the bench who our coach won't play for whatever reason. I don't know why. Right. And all of those things together, Sid, I think are a problem. And yes, it begins and starts with the medical and sport professional side of it, and getting these players optimized and developing them so that not only can they have a plan to succeed in the season, but also so Carlo knows, or whoever our coach would be if Carlo's no longer here, hey, when Fede Valverde comes back off international break on a Wednesday, he's not playing 90 full minutes on Saturday. That's just, no, especially against a bottom of the table of the table team. No, put in the rotation guys. And if you can't field a team with rotation level players from your academy, then you have another problem. Like, I just don't understand. Again, I'm not asking for the world's best players, but if you can't bring up starting level players, again, not the best, but starting caliber from your academy, then what's your academy even doing? Why is it here?
Yeah, so I guess we have 3 things there that we could use. There are 3 directions where you don't have to succeed in all 3, but you only have to succeed in one. Either the medical staff gets way better and your players are healthier, or you sign 2 players at every position. You don't get complacent and high off your own supply when you win the Champions League. Mm-hmm. And obviously you have to do a little bit of everything. It's not that simple. But and then the third would be like Barcelona, where every time a generational player gets hurt, you have a regen like FIFA just pop up in the.
But here's the thing, Sid. I'm not even saying that we have to be as good as La Masia. I'm not saying have superstars. How is it that there isn't a replacement level? And when I say replacement level, I mean not an all-class world, whatever. I mean a starting caliber player. We don't have a starting caliber left back in the academy. That's a problem to me.
I think what I find more fascinating is that before we tried Raul Asencio, we didn't have a player who could play center back from the academy. But the second he came onto the pitch, like, and made that pass, then he became, he's the next thing from Castilla.
It's just like, I think that I'm like, guys, what are we doing? Like, what are we doing?
Yeah, you definitely have to question why. And like, he comes out after in the interview and he's like, I'm a very serious player. Like, I study the game. Like, that pass, I studied it. Like, that was something that I prepared for. And I'm just like, oh, well, why is it that? And it's not just like the club, but I'm saying, and I'm not throwing any individual under the bus, but like nobody on our Castilla Corner podcast said he's good. Like nobody ever, like there was no word from anyone who watched saying he could be good. Like the word from all the Castilla guys on Managing Madrid is that we have nobody ready to play on the first team. It was that, I think even Jacobo Ramon wasn't considered good. Joan Martinez showed up in preseason, but like, I think Fortea, the right back, is the only other guy. But Asencio was never mentioned, not once. And I don't know. It's just weird. And then you have cases like Alvaro Rodriguez, who came onto the scene like 2 years ago, and now he's gone. So improve the youth academy, improve the medical staff, which involves probably innovating in some way, or just have more players. I guess so going through each one, the complacency is with what you talked about. Just Paris is getting too old. I don't even think he's getting too old as much as like, I think he knows he can end on like a perfect 5 to 10 year run, and he's getting perfectionist. It's like, okay, I don't want to like sign this bum and then we don't have 50 million to spend on the piece that would have completed my Mbappe team. And he's just getting more and more perfectionist. I'm perfectionist, so I relate to Perez. Like Real Madrid strike me as a team that's just like, they know what to do, but they don't want to do it because they're waiting for the perfect opportunity again and again.
Yes. Well, it was last summer with Euro, right? They wanted Euro. They didn't get him. And instead of signing somebody else who is slightly worse, nope, we don't want that because this is our target. And that works when you get your target. But when you don't get your target, we have what we have now. And, again, to go back to this cross-sport analogy, one of the things I'm lucky of is doing my podcast with Coach David Thorpe, who people may know is a player development coach who works with the best players in the NBA on developing their skills. And one of the things he tells me all the time about young players, particularly the young players he works with, is those guys need playing time. You don't get better sitting on the bench. I don't care that's not how you improve. You have to play because you need to experience what's happening on the pitch. So you have reference points in your brain so that you can over and over and over again. So, this is how I do this. This is how I do that. You mentioned the pass that the young center back made. Like, he's like, because I studied it. Like, I did it. Like, he got the opportunity. It's like playing time is oxygen for these guys, Sid. They need it. And here's the thing that's also interesting that David mentioned to me, and it's a theory that, not the theory, I think it's pretty proven. If you have a young player, it's always better to test them out with already established superstar elite players because those players make the game easy for everybody else. If you as a young player come on the scene and you can't play with a superstar elite player, well, then I know you're not any good because those guys make the game so much better. Maybe the problem for Asencio was he's playing with everybody at Castilla who sucks, right? But all of a sudden he's on the pitch with Jude Bellingham and all this. Oh, wow, look, all of a sudden he looks amazing, right? I love that idea. Again, try them out with established, already elite players because here's the thing. If they can't play with them, well, then you suck. Because those guys make the game easier for everybody. If you can't figure out how to play with Valverde, Bellingham, then, okay, you're not very good then because these are the best of the best, right? Rising tide lifts all ships, right? That's how good they are. That they elevate those around them. And so I think that was what we saw there with Asencio. And look, it was one match. Let's not lose our minds. He's going to make mistakes, but he needs to do that. That's how you get better, is making mistakes. Better he does it against Leganés and bottom of the table teams than away at Anfield, right? Like that, but you need to have the reps to do that.
Definitely. And I guess it's tricky in the sense that like how many teams have a pipeline where they need these players to be played. Barcelona do. There's no question.
Mm-hmm.
They have always more room for these guys. They keep them in mind while they're developing the team. There's always like a couple depth spots allocated to La Masia. And then Man City, I feel like, is in a sense like a bit of a pushback on the idea that anyone can do what Barcelona did. And in that, like, I mean, we've seen them sign so many players. How many youth players have even come up under Guardiola, under this perfect system where every player knows their role, where he controls the club? Phil Foden's been known to be good for like a decade now. Everyone knew he would be good, but fine. Phil Foden, I'll give it to him. He nurtured him, took his time. I think that's a good development path. And then Rico Lewis is the other one, but that's two players. Like, I can't think of anyone else. Unless there's someone I'm really missing, none of these guys are from Man City. Yeah.
But it's also, Sid, right? Like, again, and I think part of it is the Real Madrid, or if you're a Man City fan, whatever, this idea that everyone at every position has to be world class. And when I say world class, I mean the best in the world. Like, obviously, if you play professional football, you are world class, but I mean the best in the world at your position. That's just not a reality. Some people are just going to be regular level, and that's okay if everybody around them understands what it is that they're doing, right? In the role. I think of a Nacho, right? Nacho is not anybody's ideal world-class or the best in the world center back, right? But where would this club have been last year without Nacho? If Nacho didn't exist or he got hurt, screwed, right? But here's the thing. Nacho came from the academy, just a replacement level starter player. Obviously this is Real Madrid, so every player can't be that. But there has to be, you mean to tell me this club can't field a pipeline of Nacho level talents? Come on. Like, if you can't do that, again, of course, it would be great to have La Masia and have everybody be Lamine Yamal, Pau. Yeah, that'd be wonderful, but that's not reality. I'm not even saying that. And besides, Madrid goes out and identifies 16-year-olds from all over the country and brings them in for that purpose. But this club, if we're going to do that process, Sid, of going out and getting 16-year-old elite uber talents, which I love, cool, then the club's mandate should be everybody in here should be replacement level for the A team. That if their name is called, they could step in and play 45, 60, 90, whatever, and not shit the bed, right? A replacement level player. And we can't even do that. Or maybe we can. Carlo just doesn't want to give him an opportunity for whatever reason.
Yeah, definitely. And so that is a very cultural thing. I don't know if it changes, but definitely going to make it a big part of the show notes. Just the academy needs to be featured more. So we want to do that. And we definitely want to keep signing more players. One question I have is, so I guess like fans, again, from the outside looking in, they just see like, oh, they just go sign the best player. It's obvious. But from the inside, it's like more like, hey, we have at any point, they're going to have like a dashboard with all the players they're tracking who hit like potential superstar status. And then they're going to have filters and checklists that like narrow that large pool into a smaller pool. With each pool, they're going to have like a whole method on how to like recruit them, to go reach out to them. They're going to have a complex process to like woo them to the club. They're also going to have a complex process of deciding at any point if they want to stop proceeding with that process to sign the player, if they see a red flag, especially because they're going after these guys at 16, 17. So like in 3 months, you might decide you don't want a guy anymore. You might see a big psychological red flag. They have a huge list of red flags to look for. And also red flags to not worry about. They have green flags to look for. Like, hey, like if he has this confidence, don't worry about X, Y, Z. Like it's an art. And they've innovated so much in that one area. Clearly, I think Florentino understands marketing. He understands psychology. He comes from construction. So there's something he understands fundamentally about like Hollywood and entertainment. He's applied things he learned in construction to this entertainment business. But I feel like what we don't see is like that process getting created before he did it. It never existed in sports or like in soccer. So there was no like process of treating these players like movie stars and wooing them and, you know, going back and not negotiating and having a psychological checklist, all this before it was maybe more based on, hey, he's good, go sign him, or like not. And most clubs will follow a process. I think Real Madrid is quite sophisticated in this one area, like psychological profiling. What I guess like where would you see as an owner, Do you have any cross-sport examples of people bringing in like these sort of innovations and like maybe as presidents? And an example I think of is Steve Ballmer with the Clippers. I feel like sports, what people don't see from the outside is like these teams are like dusty, like outdated cobwebs of organizations until they have to change, like until they have to. And so and the moment they have to is when they lose. And usually when you lose, you're just copying what the dude who won last year did. You're not even actually looking and thinking, what can I do to blow everyone out of the water? You're just like, okay, what did he do? Let's go bring that in this year, win this year, and we're good. And so that's where our process of signing these Galacticos came from, not just looking at the next team, but being timeless, just saying, what do we want to do that puts us ahead of the whole game? I feel like we need something. I feel like we need something like that from the medical perspective, or from the academy perspective, because whoever designed that recruitment process has the expertise to do this. And I guess that comes back to, one, Florentino's old, but two, do you have any insight into like what these organizations look like? Is it like because a lot of these guys, if you know a paradigm and it's or you're within Florentino's circle and you know, then that paradigm is on the table to be brought to the club. But if nobody in a circle knows, then nobody cares. Nobody talks about it. So, so talk to me a bit about that.
Yeah, no, for sure. I love that you're going here, Sid. So again, I'll talk about the NBA because that's the sport that I cover directly and know well, but it's not unique to the NBA. This is all sports. The reality of this situation is that these jobs within inside sports organizations, NBA, La Liga clubs, EPL clubs, whatever, are coveted positions. 1 billion people want those jobs, okay? And they're just not going to get them. And there's only a handful of them, right? Few and far between. So once you get the job and you're in there, you're the general manager or sporting director or whatever the various position may be, you would think, Sid, that your number one goal is what you're talking about, the paradigm shifting and how are we going to win and all those things. But it isn't. The number one goal is self-preservation. How do I keep my job? Now, you would also think that winning and innovating and all that will make you keep your job, but it isn't. It's who has the most power in the organization, and how do I curry up next to that person so that they always are with me and I do it right. And so in Madrid's case, it's Florentino Perez, right? So how do I tell Florentino exactly what he wants to hear, right? So that I am always safe. Because again, these jobs, by the way, people, are incredible. They pay well. You fly incredibly all over the world. A lot of fringe benefits. You get my drift when I say fringe benefits, right? It's a wonderful thing. Who wouldn't want a job like that? Everybody would kill to have a job like that. But again, the goal is once you get it, how do I keep it? And it's not about winning to keep it. It's cozying up to the person with power. That is the NBA. You know, you mentioned Ballmer, right? And a Microsoft guy, innovator in so many ways, built the Intuit Dome, right? Like all these, which has its own issues, like pumping in crowd noise because those sections not that full, right? Like, but the reality of it is there again in the NBA, it's okay. Owner, GM, head coach, training staff, sports performance staff, all 6 departments rowing together in the same direction with the same objective. Most of the times I would argue no, right? Because everybody's, again, it's about keeping their job. If I'm the coach and we've had 2 seasons of the playoffs, you know what I'm thinking? My job is on the line this year. Hot seat. I don't care what the medical staff tells me about this person can't play or whatever. I got to keep my job. So what does that mean? He's playing 40 minutes tonight. Well, so I'll win tonight, but what's the detriment that's going to happen 2 or 3 months later? Oh, now he's hurt and out for the rest. See, you see how it's, and when you keep piecemealing everything instead of everyone working together, this is the problem. And what you talked about, Sid, about innovating and designing things differently, you designed it so you described it so perfectly, but the way you described it is very simple. The way you described it made it sound very simple. That kind of work is fucking hard, man. And most people just don't want to work that hard, right? They just don't want to. They just want to fly around and hang out with these athletes and meet girls or men or whatever the case may be rich and and party. Like, that's what they want to do. They don't want to actually roll up their sleeves and grind and work. It's hard to do that. Sleepless nights, 20-hour. No, who wants to do that? Nope, not many. Very few want to do that. But that's what it takes to innovate and find what you need. And I think to your point about medical staff, yeah, we had those checklists, right, for identifying players. Within the sport performance area, to me, that is the next frontier and where every team should, if you have a group within your sports performance system that does not want to grind like this, then they don't want you to be there, right? Like, listen, if this is not what you, and we come to a mutual agreement. Hey, this is not your jam. You don't want to. I get it. But for us, it's important. I will tell you a story, an NBA example. I won't tell you the team for obvious reasons. This team's a Western Conference team, spent like $50 million on this brand new training facility with all the bells and whistles of every possible camera angle, this test, that. I mean, Sid, like, you feel like you're walking into like NASA. Like, any kind of test you want to know or information about a player, they can do it, right? Everything. So it was set up by this famous guy, Dr. Marcus Elliott, who runs P3, which is a sports performance website. And part of one of the systems they have is it collects data, right, on player movement, and how many movements you have can tell you, like, predicting of injury, all things like that, right? So Marcus came back maybe 6 months after the facility was built and asked them, "Hey, I'd love to see the data, what you collected so far through the first 6 months, right? Not much, but let's just see what's here." Kind of kept giving him the runaround, like, "Oh, whatever, blah, 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 whatever." And he's like, "Hey, guys, I just want to see the data. What's the deal?" Said, "They don't have any data because they didn't know how to turn the machine on." What? And that kind of mentality, and here's the thing. You would think, okay, if you can't turn the machine on, a reasonable person would say, okay, let me go call or find the person and say, "Hey, we're trying to figure out how to actually turn this thing on. Can you help us?" But Sid, if you admit to someone that you don't know how to turn the machine on, what does that mean about you? That means you're useless, right? That means you're not, well, what are you doing here? And what does that mean? I won't have a job. So rather than admit that I can't turn the machine on we can start collecting this data, I'm just going to dance around it and do other things and hide, right? Because it's about saving my job, right? This is the kind of mentality that is pervasive in sports. Because if you don't know how to do this this thing, it then means you are obsolete, right? And it's like, guys, everyone can have a role to play in this, right? But we need to be open to thinking about new things and new ideas, right? But most people aren't, because if I don't know it, that means I'm not good and I'm going to get fired. And so forget that. We're just going to go with this, right? And you can kind of maybe make a parallel with Pintus on some of these old school training methods, right? I mean, we see the propaganda videos that realmadrid.com put out, right? When the players run with the masks on, they're doing the runs with the pulley system behind them. I was like, I don't think I've seen anybody use that stuff since like the 90s. Why are we still doing that kind of thing? But okay, it's what it is.
Yeah. And I think in his case, it's just like he comes in, he does a good job. The players have their own staff, but they don't care about the marketing because you win and you come back like again and again in 2017. When it happens a second time, you're not going to go complain about him building his name for himself. And you're not going to stop doing individual work, and you're not going to go to the media and tell the media, "Hey, like, I do a lot of individual work. That's why, not Pintus."
Right.
And then you start losing, and then everyone's hurt, and you're like fed up one day. Mm-hmm. Like you go game after game. You have a few games in a row where you're pissed off with Carlo and the situation and everything. And then you see like another tweet from a fan about like how Pintus is working the players, and you're like, that's it. You call your media guy, like you call your agent, like let it leak.
Put this out there. Yep.
Just psychologically, and
it's just sad, man. Like it's just and I think, again, last year when they won, everybody was saying, "Oh, remember that video because it was Jude's first year last year? He's like, oh, Pintus, he's the devil. We hate him. He kills us, but we love him, right? Because they won. Everything's wonderful. Okay, but now everybody's getting hurt and we're losing, so he's not so wonderful anymore. He's the devil, and we actually hate him, right? Like this is." And again, I think fans need to understand that, right? Like anything that gets leaked like that or whatever, it isn't like these situations just popped up all of a sudden. They've been there the whole time. But when you're winning, nobody cares, right? Everything's fine. No need to leak that out there. But once you start losing and injuries start mounting and everybody is now upset, well, now we got to start letting these stories out because now I'm pissed, as Sid mentioned.
Yeah, and as a player, it is your responsibility to take care of your body, but also technically when you hire all these people, it's also outsourced on purpose so that you don't have to worry about all that. And that the story you told though about the facility, is kind of why these teams are reluctant, like to hire just people who are not like coming from the traditional I know a friend of the president route, because like you get so many quackos who are desperate to either just make a name for themselves in this like health medical performance space where they just want to be part of the game, or like you described, or they're no different to the people who are on top, where they just want to party and get the credit. They don't really like doing the work, or if they like doing the work, they like doing a version of, they're not passionate, they just like delivering in a professional setting something that gets the invoice and like so that the money hits their account, so that they follow the terms of the contract. They don't care about making sure the player doesn't get injured.
Correct.
So, and that's why the players often have to bring in people of their own, because at the club you get these very like impersonal types. Like the chief medical performance guy is just going to make sure you trained. He just wants to make sure you're exerting yourself, that you're not doing something dumb. He's not making sure you're going above and beyond. And I guess, like, is there any examples, maybe from the NBA, or what are teams doing about this? Like, what are they, are there any big, is there a new Pintus out there we haven't heard about?
Well, I will tell you this, Sid. The Lakers had Jeannie Buss's freaking trainer as their head of athletics for a long time. Jeannie Buss's trainer.
Was it Judy?
I forget who it was. But again, listen, Jeannie Buss has a lot of money and I'm sure has a very good trainer. What does her trainer know about NBA performance? Not much, if anything, right? This is, I'm telling you, to your point about like, oh, knows a friend of the owner or whatever, this stuff happens more than you think. And it's, again, it's just an odd thing because these billionaires, Sid, who make their money in their real jobs, right? So you mentioned Florentino construction, except for the Lakers, right? They're a family-owned business, so the Lakers are their money. But these private equity guys and everybody else who make their money in like the real world, they would never tolerate this nonsense in their actual companies. Those people get fired, but for whatever reason in sports, they're like, yeah, sure, who cares? Let them in. It's like, I'm like, I don't get it.
It's so weird. Like, why are you running this like a hedge fund, but not using the standards you do at your hedge fund?
Right. This is what I don't get. I'm like, what are we doing? What are we doing?
And I've heard stories of Bombers boy Kawhi, like just going to just facilities that he should not be stepping near. And, he's this heralded example of modern science trying everything and not working. Have they tried everything, or is Bomber just building into it while he has someone else go and figure out what to do for Kawhi's knee?
I mean, that's part of it, right? And it's also, I mean, look, the reality is Kawhi has a chronic injury, right? That it's clearly what the situation is here. Like this is a chronic situation, and I don't know I've not seen any medical reports, but my guess is that this injury is not going to get better until the day he stops playing NBA basketball. Like NBA basketball is not conducive for this chronic injury to get better. So I think we are where we are with that, right? Like that, and sometimes that's the reality of it, right? Like again, as I started off the podcast saying, despite the fact that these players are medical, genetic freaks and marvels, the human body still was not designed to do the things that we're asking it to do in the compressed rate that we're asking them to do it. Match on Sunday, match on Tuesday, match again on Saturday. What? Oh, and you're going 90 plus in all of them. What? No. No, you're not supposed to do that, right? Like, and the more you do that, you sent me this this graphic card a while ago about Fede and how he's had the most minutes like between club and country over the last few years. And you and I hold my breath every time Fede steps on the pitch because I'm like, it's coming, Sid, and we know it's coming. Like it's going to happen, and I'm fearful for the day when it does because I'm like, why are we doing this? But this is the reality of the situation we're in, and if that is the case, how can we do what's right by the athlete, even if you're cynical, Sid, and you're an owner, and you ultimately don't care about their health? For your business, it's actually better for you, right? That your best players don't get hurt. So figure something out.
Yeah, they don't see the compounding impact of all the injuries. They don't realize like, okay, like if you take all the injuries away from this guy who we got mileage out of from 25 to 35, we get maybe double the mileage and he goes till he's 39. They don't see that math of it for sure. The other side of it is I think teams are so willing to live with the human cost. Like, okay, we tried our best. He got hurt. We couldn't do better. it gives you a scapegoat as opposed to like,
Yes.
hey, we tried our best. He hit the red zone. We had to play the backup. We didn't get the tactics right with the backup. Like, that doesn't sound so good now.
Sid, I love that you went there. We say this about the NBA all the time. Nobody, coach or GM, wants to lose the press conference, right? You're not going to get killed in a playoff game, right? Steve Nash, that you're when he played Kevin Durant, 8 billion minutes was overtime, because what did you do? You went down swinging with your best player, right? So no one can kill you for that. But in hindsight, if you said, what if we, because they won game 5 with Durant playing 1 billion minutes, what if we said, you know what? Let's rest him game 6 and pull off game 7. So let's say you lose game 6, game 7 happens, but you lose game 7, you're going to get murdered in the media, right? But here's the thing. So you play him all the minutes either way, you still lost anyway. So why not take the chance of being like, you know what? Like, and then the reason why they don't is exactly what you said. They don't want to get killed in the media, because to your point, no one's going to get mad at you saying, I went down with my best guy playing them 8 billion minutes. Whereas if you say, well, we played the backups or whatever, well, why did you do that? Why was Fede on the bench? You're gonna get crushed, and nobody wants to deal with that. And part of that is the media's problem, and this sort of like, and this is an American thing, right? It's like individual exceptionalism nonsense that we have, right? And it's like, guys, this is a team sport. We are trying to do what is best for the team and everybody within it, right? Wouldn't it be better if we had a little bit of a less load on this guy so that the team can better succeed and he can be better? But one day someone's going to do it. A coach will be brave enough. That's the key also, Sid. The coach that does it he'll have ultimate job security, super brave, and he knows my owner's not going to get mad, so I don't care what the media says because I'm fine. When we have that situation, it'll be good.
And that's what like Pep has achieved to a degree at Man City. Not every year, but a few years there when the squad was deep enough, when the club's whole philosophy was just tailored to what he wanted. He was doing a great job just putting out a different lineup like every couple of weeks, and it would work no matter who you're playing. It would work. It would execute the same way. And the reason it fell apart eventually is because they, like, a few years ago, they were doing a good job turning over the players really aggressively. And they went from a very high pressing team in 2018 and 19 gradually to more of a mid block that controls the game on the ball and suffocates you, but like not as high like with the press. And so that then extended the lifespan of some of their players. And then until the Haaland summer, they were doing a good job, I feel like, shaking it up a little bit here and there. And then around the Grealish summer, that's when they're like, okay, we have our core. We just need to add a few. And now that same core, they haven't added enough. It's starting to break apart.
And they're aging, right?
Yeah.
De Bruyne is older now. Like, it's just when the core starts aging, and it's the old adage, right? Bill Belichick was famous for this in New England with the Patriots in the NFL. It's always better to get rid of them a year early than a year late, right? Like that idea of, because now we're like, oh, they're too injured. We got problems now, like, right? And so again, I'm looking at that young midfield we have, super young, but I'm already starting to think, okay, because Fede's the oldest and he has the most miles. Who's next? Who's under him? Who is the Fede? Who's the guy now that we can start being his understudy? And to be quite honest, even though he's only 21, he is the next most minutes. Who is Jude's understudy, right? Because if we keep doing what we're asking Jude to do, by the time he's 28, he's not going to look great if he even makes it to 28. So this is what the club, it's hard, right? Because you have to have a short-term view and a long-term view. Carlo said this multiple times, I think last year, when journalists were getting on him for not playing Arda. And he said famously, my job is to win matches, not give young players minutes. Okay. Somebody's job in this organization is player development. It's someone's. So, okay, Carlo, you don't want to focus on it? Somebody in that club with power, it has to be their focus, right? Because ultimately what's going to happen is someone like Arda is going to be like, well, look, there are clubs who want me to play with them, and I can start and actually play. He might just eventually be like, you know what? Like, as much as I love this club, they're going to actually play me, and I can get better this way. And then if he leaves, we'll get a buyback clause, but then it might be too much money. And these are the things that you have to be constantly thinking about. And I think when you win Champions League twice in the last 3 years, and what you get, you get a little complacent, and you don't think about they'll just love staying out for Real Madrid. I'm like, they might, but these are competitors, and they want to play, and not playing doesn't make them feel good.
Yeah, and that's where someone like Cruz would pace himself naturally on the pitch, but there are other players who can't afford to do that. They're not skilled enough where you can get on the pitch if you do that. Like if you decide not to sprint and we give up a goal in a big game, like Cruz keeps playing, but Fede would get benched. And so they don't have that luxury. And so some players just are in the more workhorse category. And with them, I feel like that's one reason I want Alonso. I know Alonso relies on his players' athleticism on defense, but I think a high volume of player strategy with a defensive scheme that's more like what Pep does, where you're not relying on one guy to run so hard to bail out others like Fede. We've honestly probably taken years off Fede's career unless we bring in a starter who can rest him. Yeah, it's over for like 5 years from now. I doubt he's the same. If he is, kudos. But like he would need to get like an injury year where he doesn't play as much to sustain his longevity.
Listen, I would, as crazy as it sounds, I would love a year off for Fede. Fede, you take next year off, my guy. Like this guy is just working himself to the bone right now.
Yep. And so you have this, I feel like as our club, the culture has always been that 2 or 3 guys make up for the deficiencies of others defensively. And it's never as effective as when everyone defends a little bit. Like Man City, I feel like they don't overexert themselves defensively unless it's a really big game where they have to run hard, then they know. But like they're always close to the guy. Like they play a style of play where if they lose the ball, they're always pretty close to the other team. They can win it back. And I value that. I actually, I feel like a strategy that's not too physically taxing is my favorite as a result. Like you have to play a little slower. You always have to be able to speed it up. You have to change. There's no question you have to be able to do that. But I feel like the ideal meta, if you're taking this approach of like player safety, then you want a youth academy that can step up and you want to develop them. You want to keep 2 players at every position, but you also want to play in a way where you're not inviting injury. And I guess that one is going to be hard always because like you go watch a Jurgen Klopp team, they don't think about avoiding injury when they decide how they want to play all season. And it's beautiful. It's awesome. But then if you want to be a Klopp team, then you need to like turn over your players at a way higher rate than another team. Or if you don't do it, expect failure. Like don't expect to succeed. And that's where I don't think any team is there now. No team is like actually realizing, hey, if we exert more, except I think Pintus is there to some degree in that we have periods where we look better and worse. You accept that you won't look like if you want to exert like very high level, then expect that like you won't do it all season the same way. And I think Pintus has accepted that. I think City have kind of accepted that they want consistency all season, and they don't want to overexert all season. But Arsenal, I think Arsenal are making this mistake. Yeah, they're way like their identity is beautiful, but you need player turnover or like you can only have so many years of like Odegaard and Saka just harassing every attacker they play against. Like how many years in a row until they're exhausted? Saka is a great example of someone who's running to the ground.
Oh, for sure. And then, did he get called up for this last international with England, or is he not there? Is he out?
I'm actually not sure. Let me check.
Which, listen, teams that like are, if they want to game the system and be like, oh, so and so's hurt, they're not. I am all for that. Like these silly international breaks where they got to play like 90 plus, like Modric for this team, for instance, right? Another 90 plus the other day. I think he went 80 yesterday. And are you going to be surprised if he plays 60 plus minutes on Sunday? Like, it's just, and he's 39, so he definitely can't keep doing this. Like, this is not a player we should be relying on this heavily at this stage of his career. And to your point, okay, that's fine if you want to be a Klopp team. But then, again, this is why every group within the organization has to work together. If that is our mindset, then our player turnover needs to be high. Our depth needs to be on, and again, not just depth for depth's sake, which is what I think some teams do. Oh, we need bodies. No. Bodies that Klopp would actually play, not just dudes who were just there, right? And I think a lot of teams don't do that. They just, and you have to do a good enough job of, as a sporting director, explaining the project to a potential signee. Here's what it would be like. This is what we envision, right? Like, yes, coaches are always going to feel like, look, when we get our big Champions League European night, we're going with our Once de Gala, right? Like our best 11. Of course, we all know that. But outside of those nights, yeah, there's going to be times where you're going to get a ton of minutes, right? Like, particularly coming off these international breaks. This period right now, Sid, in theory, should be the ideal time before the Anfield game, obviously, where Madrid's like, it's a full squad rotation on Sunday, full squad, because what are we doing? Everybody played 1 billion minutes over the break, but we can't do that because we literally have nobody, right? Like, so everybody's got to play and then go back and then go away to Anfield on Tuesday night. Jesus, that's going to be a tough 48 hours, really tough.
It is. It definitely is. And I guess, like, so on that note, with these, like, I guess when we see Florentino, we see him as like the best, like, president in football, or one of the best. But if you then like flip the paradigm and saw him as a CEO of a company, then he's just one of many CEOs. And like, this type of complacency doesn't happen at like a Facebook or Twitter, or like these big multi-billion-dollar corporations that are even bigger than sports teams that can afford to buy multiple sports teams. So I feel like that, and I think that what you illustrated earlier is really accurate. Like, they're not as cutthroat as like maybe a Mark Zuckerberg, like these guys who run tech companies, and that's what we want from Perez. We want him to see it not as like I feel like sports is a little more old school, like mafia, like power structures.
Yeah,
Tech companies are more new school, cutthroat, like whoever's number one, and it's in flux 24/7. You can't get complacent in the world of tech companies. You, like, a new software releases tomorrow, someone releases an app on it, and you're screwed. Like, if you don't act. And I don't see that urgency in sports. But I think it's just fascinating because I feel like there's a huge mismatch between the amount of innovation and the amount of money in sports. Is that is this an industry where things are dumber than they should be with how much money there is?
Yeah, for sure. Sports is, in many ways, one among the slowest industries to evolve and innovate, right? That's just the nature of the beast. And a lot of it is because of the culture imbued in sports, right? Sports is a very macho culture, a very, this is how we do it, rub some dirt on it, right? Because the things that we're talking about, Sid, with players and rest and optimizing that performance, certain people would describe that as soft, right? These guys aren't tough enough, like, which we know that's the complete opposite. That's not, they're actually far more tougher than they were 50, 60 years ago, right? Like it, but that's not how they're described, because it's like, oh, they got this person and that person. And the problem with it is the media, who are filled oftentimes with players who are from previous generations, will say, well, in my era, we didn't have da-da-da-da. Yeah, well, that's why you guys sucked, right? That's why you limp around now when you walk and you can't get out of your car. Like, we have the information, and why are we not using it, right? We have it. Again, the talent that exists in the world is overwhelming, but you have to do that process. So, we talked about the checklist that Madrid uses when it goes to identify players. To a certain extent, Sid, when you're identifying top talent, that checklist is pretty easy, right? It's harder at the academy level when you're trying to develop a replacement level player, right? That's much, much harder. That's that grinding we talked about that people just don't want to do. And it's like, okay, well, but somebody has to. If our goal is someone has to do that. And there's somebody out there who wants to, so find them. Like, right, Florentino, pay them. Pay whoever it is and find them. They exist. They're definitely out there. They're going to radically change the culture. You're going to be like, hey, look at this. And not only are you going to have replacement level guys, you might have a diamond in the rough you don't know about, because all of a sudden, because of circumstance, someone has to play more than they should. Next thing you know, shit, look at this. We have this awesome player we thought was just going to be a rotation player. Now it's like, wait a minute. This could be a legit, like, someone who makes an impact in the Champions League. How would you know?
Yeah, and that's another area where I see this difference between CEOs versus in terms of like stinginess when they need to expand the operation. In sports, it's like, okay, are we spending the money on a player? What do you want? Blank check. Any other position in the organization feels like they're just stingy, and it's stupid. Like, why would you not want to pay them as much? And it's just mathematically, it doesn't make sense when like the players' outcome affects your results. Then pumping another few million into off-pitch stuff, it always makes more sense. Like,
and that costs less than the player.
it does. And they just see these players as fancy toys, and that's where, maybe he could go and revolutionize the, like, he could revolutionize Fabrica, the academy, but he doesn't have the budget to go and be like, okay, you need to buy 2 million, you need to hire 2 million a year worth of people, whether that's 1 million to one guy and the other million to 10 guys, or however you break that down. and they don't have the budget. And both for the youth team and for the medical performance side. And maybe there aren't that many people who have the conviction. Like, I think the other thing you recognize, and I'm recognizing as I try to get into space, is like these like systems they build are niche. They don't update it unless they have to. And so there's always room for someone who knows the exact problem to come in, research it in advance. And like, these people have no solution. They're waiting for people like to come in and know what's going wrong. And so the number of guys who could go and already have systems developed to go to Fabrica and change it without like maybe spending 6 months figuring out, okay, what happens in soccer? They don't exist that easily. And I think, but again, why don't you go bring on someone like Todd Bowley? And I know he hasn't done a good job. I know he hasn't done a good job.
Todd.
But what he does with the Dodgers, I feel like, is this what he does with the Dodgers, where he brings on like the best people for every little aspect of the Dodgers?
And of course, one of the advantages the Dodgers have is in a sport like baseball, there's no salary cap, right? So you can literally spend $1 billion on your payroll and nobody cares, right? And the Dodgers have that kind of money, right? So that helps. Now, but mind you, right, they did win the World Series this past October, but they've been the best team in baseball, at least record-wise, the last 5 years, and only have 1 World Series title to show for it, and 2. Like, so it's one of those things where it's like, what's the draw, right? And in soccer, you don't have an unlimited budget, right? You have to kind of stay within the margins as it relates to players' salaries and all that. But again, I think to your point, Sid, on the other side, this club has money. Every year I see, oh my God, Real Madrid, #1 in revenue. Like, so money, it exists, right? Again, how can you funnel that into the off pitch? And by off pitch, I mean like the medical, Fabrica, whatever it may be. How do you funnel into there? I saw a talk from the Sloan Conference, and this one's from the Sloan Conference from 4 years ago. And it was a company tracking minutes of EPL players. And I was like, man, and you're given all the proper zones and whatever and all that. And I'm like, God, does Madrid even employ that? Do they even have that set up where oh yeah, Fede's in red right now. And okay, if he's in red, does it matter? Does that person have the authority to say to Carlo, he's in red? No. Or to say to Florentino, he's in red, he can't play.
Does any team have that? Does any team like in the NBA too? Because I'm like looking at it and I'm realizing how much of like basically the youth development role and the medical performance role, you basically need personalities on par with the president and the owner and the head coach or the star player. And usually the head coach is someone who has an aura, personality. I hate using that word.
It's true. People, it's true.
Yeah. And what that comes back to is that aura is really conviction and experience. That means when you say something, you know what you're talking about and believe it, and you can tell someone, push back against someone when they're wrong, and you can speak your mind without deferring to them. And that you need. I feel like there's no culture of these people in sports right now. All these medical performance directors are people who defer, who are afraid of losing their job. There's no guy paid $1 million who has the authority to go push back on the head coach.
I mean, Sid, you said it. Like, that's the reality. The closest team to that in the NBA, I would say, seems like the Oklahoma City Thunder. And it's like bits and pieces. They don't have all the pieces, right? Like, so Oklahoma City has a little bit of it. The Miami Heat have a little bit of it, right? But like, no one team has all of it set up where it's like, hey, you can really do what is ultimately best for the player, where the head coach is not worried about, I'm going to get fired, all the various things. And it's tough, right? Because again, if the coach has a better relationship with the owner, he goes to the owner and he says, hey man, that kid science geek, and this is how they talk, Sid. Like, I know this. That dork that you have down there or whatever, he's telling me I can't play Jimmy Butler, and it's not the Heat. Let me use a different album. He's telling me I can't play Superstar A 40 minutes tonight. How much are we paying that guy? Nah. Jimmy told me he's fine, or this player told me he's fine. And you guess what happens to a little geek guy in the basement? See ya. Right? This is the reality, and it sucks because we're not doing right by the athletes. And ultimately, we are all fans here first. That's why we're here. The athletes, are the most precious commodity in this entire enterprise. They're the thing that people spend their money on. So why are we not doing everything to optimize them to the best? It's just like, it blows my mind on a regular basis.
Yeah, for sure. And I guess where it comes down is, I feel like so many of these teams follow the personalities of their owners. Even if you like, sometimes you get lucky, you bring on a Perez, or I mean, Perez is kind of like the top position of Real. So maybe
Right.
like Liverpool, you get lucky, you bring on a Michael Edwards, or you get like Eric Spoelstra at the Heat, and these guys, and even Spoelstra is like an extension of Pat Riley. Like the top dog dictates like the first guys you bring in. If you have a clear vision for the organization, you can like imprint your personality all over the place. And I feel like what is this, based on what we're talking about, this big shift won't come. I don't know if any of these current owners will do it of their own volition, or if someone new will come in, because you need someone who's like comes in with this perspective, hey, like who sees this market inefficiency of, hey, guys are getting hurt, teams aren't putting out their best 11. If you can fix that, you can be overpowered. And I think you got to bring in someone who sees all this. I think an owner who just sees it from scratch. I don't know who's going to be. Maybe some biotech company goes like gets as big as Facebook, and then they have the money to buy it. But it's got to come from someone who's already succeeded probably in the biology space, on biology entrepreneur space, because most of these guys just succeed in industries where, like, you know, you're hiring minimum wage people. Maybe like you don't see humans for what, like you don't realize the cost of a minimum wage shift on a human. You're just like, okay, he can come do the like labor for 8 hours. We're good. That's the cost. You pay him, he delivers. Like this idea that the body is fragile is just new to these people, and sports is the last place you want that.
Yes. No, you're so right, Sid. And I think to your point, it's going to take. So first of all, we have to look at why most people buy sports franchises in the first place, right? And for most people who buy sports franchises, they're vanity plays, right? They do it so that they can hang out with super rich and awesome athletes, and frankly, so they can have sex with lots of women. That's why most people buy sports franchises, right? So it's going to take someone who doesn't actually care about any of that, is not seduced by the cult of celebrity and former athletes and whispering in there and all of that. And it says, no. What I want is to run an organization where I have every department optimized, my talent on the floor, on the pitch, on whatever is optimized. We have people who have ideas and who it's a culture of. That's a lot of work. And I don't know if anybody's ever going to do that. I just don't know. I don't. But it will take someone like that, to your point, a very new school person who succeeds in like biotech or something, who has that rare ability of like, I understand the lab, but I also understand people too, right? Like it's going to take someone who is not seduced by the aura and cult of personality, who's not like, oh my God, I was in a room with so-and-so and it was great. I'll tell you the story because it kind of fits and ties in. So I work in media, right? And like all media people, we like when people like us. It's a human thing, right? It's always fun to be in an environment where people. One of the NBA's most popular coaches by the media in many ways, and people don't want to think about this, is Doc Rivers. And it's because Doc comes into a press conference, unless he's like really mad about like a call or whatever, he's always telling a joke when he walks into his seat. He says, "Hey, Sid, how you doing, man?" Like, right? Doc knows how to play the game and make you feel good. And if you're a beat reporter and you're covering this team day in, day out, oh man, it's just so nice when I see Doc. So you're not going to actually dig into the fact that, has Doc actually cared about coaching since early Clipper days? Like you're not worried about that because Doc makes you feel good, right? Like that's how that works. And so, and he has a personality about him that when you're in a room with Doc, you're like, man, all his basketball knowledge, and he does, right? But is Doc interested in grinding and doing the level of work necessary to optimize? Like, at this stage of his life, no. Right.
And it doesn't matter whether like what you think. Doc knows how to make it feel like you don't, whether you realize it or not. Like you get the job if you play the game well enough to make people think you can do it. That's it. You could be going home running 2K all night and then coming back pretending to be the Bucks head coach, not caring. And you would still get it because you have the brand. Right. And sports, so much of it is this stupid brand. It's a facade. Yep. It's a big facade. And that's really funny the way you described Doc.
But it does. You feel good. So everyone likes Doc. It's just fun, right? But again, it takes you away from doing the actual serious analysis of wait a minute, what are we actually doing here, right? And that's sport, right? That is our challenge with this industry. So much of it is about personalities and auras and all that stuff. And it's like, wait, guys, all that's well and good and important to an extent, but what are we actually trying to accomplish, or what is our goal, right? And for some organizations, winning is high on the priority list. For others, not so much. They're just happy to make the money, with the collective bargaining agreement, all the checks these owners get for revenue sharing, and take their money and just go do whatever.
Definitely. Now I've been very clear saying I don't think Florentino understands the human body as well as he understands superstars, marketing, and the raw math of success. I think he understands that. Like, he's very good at seeing if you tilt that, if you tilt the mat towards winning, he will see that very well. I don't know if he understands like who to trust with the medical stuff. And yeah, you need a central guy. So I guess now we've established that you need to raise the pay grade of these medical guys so they have more authority and can push back and do what's right for the team. Raise the pay grade of the youth development guys. Now, let's say that still needs to happen. But what's the closest in sports today? We need this biotech owner. Who today is the closest? Now, in soccer, I think like Madrid and City are right up there. I think Liverpool, now that they have Edwards back in the fold, are going to quickly approach that fold. They have guys. For what it's worth, I think Liverpool's guys are like trend towards that branding thing we were just talking about. They have some guys who put these fancy gadgets on them. I don't think the measurements are telling you anything. I know they're not, dude. I don't care about your neurotransmitter level when you're crossing. Like, that's not, it doesn't matter. Like, go to bed on
neurotransmitter level when you're crossing.
Like, what is that going to tell you? Hey, like, change the angle by 5 degrees, or like make sure you wake up at 9 a.m. the day before a game so that the crosses are at the right spot. Like, what are you going to tell them? Some of those are really dumb. Like I think having a whole facility that measures you is great if you know how to turn on the machine.
Correct.
I think that's different. I think measuring everything all the time. I'm not a big fan of wearables. I bought an Aura ring. I don't like wearing it. And like I do have that like OCD personality type that these players have. So I know they think about some of these things. I think wearing a vest while you're doing one exercise, like I'm not gonna name the brand, but like I don't buy.
I know.
But there are many brands that do all that, and so yeah, that's the hard part. You have to accept that like their health space is full of crack nuts. Like unfortunately, like big pharma is so evil. It's created so much self-experimentation in the space. So you have these renegades. Some of them are cowboys that don't know what they're talking about, who are outlaws. Like some of them are legitimate people. So it's a Wild West. But who's exploring the Wild West the best right now? Like I know I've heard the Kansas City Chiefs, his owner, he's very big in innovation. I know Golden State was amazing at innovation when they came on the scene. Tell me more.
Kansas City for sure. Golden State, again, I mentioned Oklahoma City. I think they are as well. In the NBA, it's tough, right? Because that sport is so different because of the amount of players on the court. It's only 5. So like how we said, Madrid winning the Champions League twice in the last 3 years and all that masks a lot of problems. You draft Nikola Jokic, it hides a lot of problems because he's fucking amazing.
Really hides like everything.
Right? So it's like, oh, our organization is great because we got Jokic. It's like, you're not that good, actually. Jokic is what's papering over all your problems, right? Like, I think Orlando's starting to do some interesting stuff. Indiana as well. Like but no one has it perfect. Nobody has it down where they're like, okay, our medical staff is doing this, our sports science group is doing this. They're talking with the head coach here. You ultimately have to have a head coach who, again, it's everything in this business, Sid, is about, again, job preservation, right? I, as the head coach, can't seem to know to appear to know less than the science data geek. Like, or else why am I here? Right? This is the fear, as opposed to no, we work together. It's a collaborative situation, right? I deal with the X's and O's and the players, and I communicate with them. You tell me what the data is saying. We talk to the player and we say, hey, man, how are you actually feeling, honestly? And here's the other part about this, Sid, that people don't, fans don't often think about. Players lie all the time and tell you they're fine. Because why? There's a contract year. I got to get paid. All these various things. And it's like, well, wait. Or for fear that if I tell the team how I'm really feeling, they may not renew my contract. And then I won't have it's all right. So it's all these competing factors. And
it's so deep. It's to the point where for me, if I'm working with a player, I'll just say this. If I unless I charge enough, they'll lie to me too. Because if they're going to pay enough for me, there's no incentive with them to be honest with me either. Like, correct. It's so weird. Like it's even if it's not coming from their own pockets, like it's that money then creates an energy where you have to respect the person. And it's crazy. Yeah. Like the players get paid so much. They're just afraid about some bullshitter who's not on the same salary just taking away his money.
Yeah, that's and it's tough. So ultimately, I don't even know if we ever get to that perfect situation, right? Where every group is working. It just probably won't happen. But the teams that will do the best in all sports going forward are the ones that continue to push this envelope, push the innovation forward, keep trying, keep getting, hey, maybe we don't get the star player, but we get like the all-star to agree with us, or we get the net, right? And it's like, and you just keep moving the envelope. It's like pushing a boulder up a hill, right? It's just a little bit and a little bit. Like that's how it's going to be, because ultimately what we want is going to take a whole, you mentioned paradigm shift, and a completely different mindset, and not just from clubs, but from the media who cover the space as well. And that's,
Yeah. And maybe something like what Pat Riley does in Miami, but more health centric. I know he's big discipline centric, not as much.
But even with Miami, right? So earlier this season, Spo, the reporters were noticing that Bam was shooting threes and the team was taking a bunch of more threes, right? And they were like, "Oh, Spo, if you have you noted that, like, is this like a concerted effort that you guys are?" And Spo immediately was like, "Guys, it's just like, you're making a big deal about nothing." Like, and he really because Spo can't be seen to be saying that, because that's not really what Riley wants, right? So Spo has to please the Riley end of the spectrum here, and that's not a Riley thing, right? He doesn't like that way that the game is played. So Spo, even though that's what clearly he's doing by making them take more threes, he can't come out and say in a press conference that yes, that is right, because Pat's gonna be like, "What are you doing, bro?" Right? You see, these are the games these people have to play, right? And in many ways, to bring it back to Real Madrid, this is why, in so many ways, Carlo keeps his job, and why? Because he understands, look, I need 15 extra players, but this man ain't going to give it to me. So I can't be out here saying, so instead I'm going to say, oh, we have everybody we need right here. Everything is fine, right? Because he's trying to keep his job and keep Florentino happy. Because if he says, I don't have players, who is he calling out? Florentino on the board. That is not good for job safety and job security, right? This is the game.
And it's so weird to me that he still loses those conferences every time. I'm so weird to me that Florentino's willing to lose the media battle in terms of, are you signing enough players? He doesn't care. Like, he loves this mystique marketing with who we're signing.
Yeah. That's his jam. He loves it. Oh, there's some 16-year-old in Argentina that nobody's ever heard of that, like, okay, great.
Yeah, and he's always just linking us to I'm starting to wonder if linking us to the biggest names, even if we're not actually trying to get them, is just his marketing plan. But yeah, they have those strategies, and it's definitely a complex world. And as much as I personally would love to work on the Real Madrid medical team, but if you guys want to fly on the wall, you want to create like a Soprano style TV show, I'm also all ears for that. If any of you is listening, because sports is really much fun about the drama and the intrigue. Yes. And this is not obvious. Like, I'm way past the tactics phase. I love tactics. I bring it to all of you. I don't mean I'm not. I'm taking it seriously when I deliver it. But this is what I find fun. Like, what I put myself in Flo's shoes every day. Put myself in the shoes of these guys. See, what are you doing? And it's so much more complex because you have these weird power structures. And I think maybe any workplace has some of this dynamic, but it's way more like cartoonishly exaggerated with these in sports.
Without question, Sid, you're dead on with that. I've always said forever, like, the NFL Hard Knocks series is very popular, right? People love watching that because it's like what goes on, the practice, whatever. I would love that for the NBA or for soccer or football, right? Just like, because you're getting into it, because these structures and these micro environments are somewhat emblematic of a larger society, but they also operate in a different way, because these people spend so much time together and they fly together places, like, again, things that fans don't think about, right? It's like, oh, look at this video, like, the players are all getting along, everybody's happy. But then, like, all right, if we're getting to fly on the wall, it's like, oh, why is so-and-so not sitting next to so-and-so? Oh, because so-and-so slept with so-and-so's girlfriend and everybody knows. And all these things that happen behind the scenes that, and again, to a certain extent, we don't really have any right to know. It's none of our business, but those things cause problems on the field, right? Like, you get into a fight with your partner before you go to work. It's probably going to be a bad day at work for you. Same for these dudes, right? It's going to be a bad day. Like, it's just how it goes, man. Like, and we have to, like, again, think about these people as people. They're not machines. And even though they seem like it at times when they're on the pitch, they're people who have emotions and normal things going through their lives, and shit bothers them and they get upset about stuff. Like, we all saw the video at the Atalanta game at halftime when Jude's like, you guys got to finish the fucking attack because it's running back and forth. And that was game one. He's already yelling at them about this running is driving me nuts. And that's a small little tiny snippet of the things that go on, right? Like in the NBA, everybody saw the Draymond punch of Jordan Poole. You think that was the first time Draymond punched a teammate in practice?
That was the end of their long running thing.
I'm like, it wasn't. Like, Draymond's probably punched a bunch of people in practice before. Just the video never got out, right? And when you have all that testosterone and alpha maleness competing for top dog, and it's primitive in so many ways, right? Again, one of the things about human beings, Sid, you know this, we like simple answers for things, and we like to categorize things, right? Because it makes things easy for us. And unfortunately, when you're talking about stuff like this, like Madrid and what's going on, it's not as simple as Carlos sucks and his bad tactics. Like that's one piece of 8 billion other things that are probably going wrong, right? Like, it's complicated. And in order to address it, it's a lot of heavy lifting to do it. Will it all get fixed? Probably not. And will it get papered over because we signed the next superstar player who, yes, of course it will. But if you don't address those things, they'll keep bubbling to the surface.
Definitely. And I think that's a good note to kind of close out on. We got a lot of things we talked about, but mainly the youth team and the medical team needing to bring in new personalities, just change the scope of people with them. Really important. We've gotten a little high off our own supply. And I feel like, I don't know if it's Florentino or Jose Angel Sanchez, but we need like someone young to come in at Real, kind of take charge of the medical team. And we just need a new paradigm where a sports team someday will come out and be like human first. And I think they'll change the game and a lot more. Gerard, thank you very much for coming on. Gerard from True Hoop, everyone. It was a pleasure having you on. Any final thoughts?
Sid, always a pleasure to be with you, and I'm with you 100% right there. Someone who has the gravitas to say what they feel and mean without fear of being fired or or losing their job, right? That's the key. If we can get that and make a human first, I love that you said that human first approach, that team's gonna have a huge advantage.
Well, that's all for today's episode, everyone. Feel free to subscribe if you like it for more members only episodes, and feel free to leave comments if you enjoyed. Always take note. Thanks.